This is Eric from Real Property Management, and I wanted to go through a quick tutorial video on how to calculate the cost of vacancy. There's a great book titled Predictably Irrational by the behavioral economist Dan Ariely. In it is a chapter called The High Price of Ownership. It explains how we tend to overvalue those things we own, while staying very objective about those things we don't own. We have a natural blind spot when it comes to things that are ours. It's a fantastic book, and he has lots of great videos online, including one explaining that specific concept. The equation I'm going to go through next will help you overcome this blind spot and see your rental property more objectively. Okay, so let's figure out how I'm going to price my rental property. My previous tenant was paying $16.50 in rent, and a few other similar properties nearby are advertising something close to that. So I'm going to use $16.50 as my fair market value rent. For this part of the equation, the $16.50 is money that I'm not bringing in because it's sitting vacant. This is essentially my opportunity cost of vacancy. Now let's stop for a second here. Why isn't there a spot to put the mortgage amount? Well, because unfortunately for me, renters don't care what my mortgage is. If I was selling you my truck, you wouldn't ask how much I still owed on it. Why? Because you don't care. You have an amount you feel as though this year, make, and model is worth in its current condition. The rental market is no different. The mortgage on this property has no bearing on its value in the current rental market. Okay, let's get back to it. Next, I'll put in the utilities that I'll now be paying for a vacant property while there isn't a tenant otherwise paying them. In this example, gas is $92, electric is $25, water sewer is $98, trash service is $17, and landscaping is $150. This brings me to a grand total of $2,032 per month. Now I want to know what that is on a daily basis, so I divide by 30 days in the average month. This gives me a vacancy cost per day of $68. I'm going to highlight that red for us because I'll be using that number again later. So let's say that I'm pretty proud of my little rental property. After all, it took me years to save up to afford it, and now I've got countless weekends spent fixing it up over the years. Therefore, I think I can get a little higher than market for it. I'll start advertising it, let's say, $17.50 per month. I'm going to take that amount and multiply it by 12 months in a year to get my gross rent per year at that goal rent of $17.50 per month. That comes out to $21,000. Now I'll do the same for my fair market value rent of $16.50. Multiply it by 12 months, and I'll get a gross rent per year of $19,800. Now this part of the math is pretty easy, but let's do it anyway. I take my goal rent per year of $21,000 and I subtract my fair market value rent of $19,800, and I get a difference or additional gross revenue of $1,200. Now here's where things get a little more interesting. I'm going to take my additional gross revenue per year and divide it by my vacancy cost per day of $68. It comes out to 17.6, but to keep things interesting, we'll simply call it 18 days. That means that in those 18 days, I will have used up the additional revenue from my higher rent price of $17.50 simply by sitting vacant, waiting for that higher rent price. Here's an even easier way to look at it. I'm going to plug my results into this sentence. Every day my property goes vacant, I miss out on $68. After going vacant for 18 days, waiting for $17.50, I would have made more money by renting it earlier for $16.50. I love using this method because it takes the emotion out of the equation. We're all very proud of what is ours, and we tend to lose our objectivity when it comes to valuing it. This method breaks it down and gives us a concrete timeline of when we need to drop the rent in order to stay profitable. Again, this is Eric from Real Property Management, and I hope you enjoyed this short tutorial video on calculating the cost of vacancy.